Hello everyone and welcome to Ash's Whiskey Wars. Today I'm going to be sharing with you guys, I hope this is not going to be too much of a negative video today, but I really don't care if distilleries get hurt or people get offended. I think I'm doing my job as a reviewer to give you guys honest feedback always. As it says in my bio, 100% honest always. And I think it's really important that if I praise certain whiskies and say, I really recommend you buy these whiskies, that I also give you guys whiskies that I recommend you don't go and buy, because I don't think they're very good. My thing has always been and always is, I don't want you guys to waste your money or to end up buying a whiskey because of me and then not enjoying that whiskey, because, you know, then you could think quite negatively of me and things like that. I have zero affiliations or relationships with anybody related to a distillery out there. Let's just get that clear straight away. But it means that I have absolutely zero bias when it comes to anything. So that's exactly what I like. So whether you agree with my picks or disagree with my picks, I hope we can all agree on the fact that I'm giving an honest opinion on all these whiskies, on all the reviews that I do on YouTube. And even though in the thumbnail or the title of the video may suggest that these are the worst things ever in the world to drink, they're not, but they are the worst whiskies that I own, if that makes sense. And these definitely, I do not recommend that any of you do go and pick up. Having said all that, whiskey is subjective and taste is subjective, as you will see with at least one of these whiskies that is going to cause a lot of controversy. But again, just being honest. And there will be some whiskies here today that you do like, and I just don't, and that's okay. But I definitely don't feel like I'm doing my job to you guys correctly if I don't tell you about these whiskies. Now that that's out of the way, I'm going to kick things off with the only limited edition whiskey of these 11 that I'm going to be sharing with you guys today. Actually, there's two more that I want to touch on, three more that I want to include. I don't actually have the bottles with me here right now, but I did record a video about 6 months ago, and I actually included them in the video that is talking about the same thing. I just didn't end up posting that video. So I may well clip those clips into this one for those three whiskies, which will make it 14 whiskies to talk about. So kicking things off with that limited edition I was telling you about, this is an Irish whiskey, and it is from Jameson. And that is the Jameson Crested finished in Black Ball Metric Stout barrels. So when I first saw this whiskey in duty free in Cork, I got so happy because I really enjoyed the Jameson Crested. And I also enjoyed the stout cask. So this one promises the two. Now the stout cask, they are maturing the whiskey in different stout barrels. I believe 8 Degrees Brewing is a local brewery in Ireland to the Middleton Distillery. So it gives you a different flavour profile. And then also they're not just aging the Jameson original spirit, they're aging the Crested in those stout barrels. So I really was interested in just to see how this one came across. And if I'm being honest, it just doesn't work. It just does not work. And I like the Crested, I like the stout cask. This one, no, just no. Sometimes you can have two nice things, merge them, they're just not good together. This is definitely not peanut butter and jelly, you know. This is, yeah, it's a shame, but it's not nice. And actually, I've owned this for a couple of years now, and I still have that much left. And if you know me, when I buy a whiskey, they don't last that long, half full. Yeah, I've given it plenty of chances. I thought, open it up, keep drinking it, different seasons, all that. But honestly, it just did not work. I won't spend too much time talking about these whiskies because I have a lot to cover, and I know some people don't like me talking too long about each whisky. So, enough said, don't recommend it. Do you know, there's actually 3 Irish whiskies here today that I want to talk about, so let's just get the Irish out of the way first. Next up, we have another Irish whiskey, this time from Dublin, and it's been finished in rum barrels, and it just doesn't work for me either. And this is the Teeling Small Batch. So this is actually an entry-level Teeling to their range. The price isn't bad, it's about £35 in the UK, 46% ABV, non-chill filtered. It sounds good, that's why I bought it. But the execution's just really poor in my opinion. Whiskey with rum, sometimes it can work, but honestly I feel like most of the time it just doesn't work. And this is one of those cases, unfortunately. I also find the spirit fairly young and youthful and quite spirit driven. The finish is quite short. I don't get on with the whiskey. So there goes the small batch. And finally, for the final Irish whiskey, if you're an old subscriber to the channel, you might know which one I'm pulling up. That's the Hinch Peated. Now, as I mentioned with the Jameson, if I've owned a whiskey for a year and it's half full, you know I've not enjoyed that whiskey. I bought this in 2021, so it's maybe 3.5 years old, and look how much I've drunk out of that whiskey. Maybe I just go, mic drop, enough said. This is the Hinch Peated, bottled at 43% ABV, and honestly, I've had it recently, and it's better, but it has been opened for 3.5 years. I just remember when I first bought this and I was opening this whiskey up, to me it tasted like battery acid, or what I perceived that to taste like. It smelled like a chemical plant. If you have water in a bottle and you put an electric current in there and it tastes like quite leady and metally, yeah, this actually is one of my worst whiskies of all time. But these 11 are really, but this one is up there. It is something that I just strongly don't recommend you go and pick up. Quickly moving on. I'm actually going to touch on an English whiskey. It's the only English whiskey that I own. I do want to make it a thing next year actually to purchase more English whiskies. I think it's a really exciting field that's coming up. Especially locally to me, there's some really exciting stuff out there. This is from a local distillery actually, near me. I don't want to talk about it too much because this is the only whiskey that they've released, and I don't believe they want to continue making whiskey. I think they focus much more on their gins, which are really good gins. But this was something to celebrate 10 years. They released this whiskey. It's not 10 years of age though. And this is the Batch Burnt Malt Whiskey. So it's from Batch. It's a 40% whiskey. The bottle is incredible. It came in a really nice wooden box that I still have actually. You have to really. This was a really expensive whiskey. It retailed for £150, which is ridiculous, but it's because of the bottle and the wooden box that it came in. And I got it as a gift, I think at half price. Interestingly though, this whiskey gives me burnt popcorn really, really strongly, which I actually like it when I get a new flavour in a whiskey. And that's not something that I get in many whiskies. And so I really do appreciate that. But it is very lemon forward, but not in the natural kind. It's more like a kitchen cleaner, bathroom cleaner lemon flavour, which really does ruin the whiskey for me. Would I buy this one again? Absolutely not. Would I recommend anyone goes out and buys this? Absolutely not. But again, it might not be available anymore, and they're not pursuing whiskey, I don't believe. So enough said about this whiskey. Appreciate they gave it a crack and released something. But yeah, moving on again. And I'm going to talk about a Japanese whiskey now. And this was actually purchased as a gift for me. Not from anyone in the industry, from a family member. And that's the Kiyasuku. So it's whiskey matured in Japan, and it's Mizunara cask finished. Bottled at 40% ABV. It's world whiskey matured and blended in Japan. But I've got to be honest, I really don't get on with this whiskey at all. What is cool though, is you do get a really nice ginger note in the whiskey. And ginger and apricot is in there. It's quite light and floral, bit of sandalwood. It has nice aspects that I know Japanese whiskey is going to give me, which does excite me for the future. I just didn't like this whiskey. Okay guys, moving on to something peated now, and we're going to go to Scotland. In fact, the 6 whiskies left in this video are all Scotch whiskies. And it's going to be another rum cask finished whiskey, just like the Teeling, but this one with a peated Scotch. It just really does not work for me. And maybe it's just a personal opinion. I don't know about you guys. Do let me know in the comments down below. But for me personally, I just don't quite like how a lot of whiskey is used with rum casks. Some of them crack the code and do an amazing job, but a lot of them I feel don't get it right, and it really does ruin the whiskey. Pretty cool tin, I have to be honest. This is the Smokehead Rum Riot. Don't confuse it with the Rum Rebel. The Rum Rebel is, in my opinion, a lot nicer. Bottled at 46% ABV. That one's for the UK market. This, I believe, is for the European market. I actually picked it up in Germany, and it's bottled at 43% ABV. It was originally a travel retail exclusive, but it's available everywhere now. I really do not get on with this whiskey. For me, honestly, I get decayed tropical fruits, but it doesn't give me the sweetness that I want in tropical fruit. It's a mouldy, decayed note that I get. That's very salty, very earthy peat, tobacco, but it almost comes across like a little bit of sick. It's for me, it's not a whiskey that I enjoy at all. Of course, it smells better and tastes better than sick, but there is something in there that sometimes you smell it, and I am reminded a little bit of that, and it's. I don't like the whiskey. I don't recommend the whiskey. If you do want something finished in rum, maybe go for the Rum Rebel, because that is nicer and it comes across a little bit sweeter in those fruits, for me personally. And for another whiskey, this is another peated whiskey, and this is the peated and sherry cask finished Arnock. Now this is also bottled at 43%, but I have to be honest with you guys. This whiskey has a really strong malt vinegar note. And I love malt vinegar. I know most people that I've met outside of the UK really dislike vinegar. If you're from the UK, you're probably going to love vinegar. It's just a cultural thing. But in a whiskey, it's just not nice. You certainly don't want to drink vinegar, do you? I do get a strong vinegar note on this whiskey. And for me, mentally I can't look past it. And so whenever I drink it, it's kind of like grin and bear it when I drink it, if I'm being totally honest with you. I could talk about it for more. It's going to be a long video though, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Don't recommend this one at all. Okay guys, next up, we're going to a distillery that I really don't like to knock, because this has an emotional connection with me. This was actually the distillery where I got my second ever bottle of scotch, but it was the one that really got me hooked onto scotch, and especially peated whiskey as well. And I tried the 10-year-old. That was the first one I got. I also picked up the Journey quite a few times. You might know what it is. It's bottled at 40%, and it's Jura. At the time, it was my first foray into anything peated, and I think I bought 6 or 7 bottles of it that I just kept going through. I wasn't trying different whiskies. I liked it, so I just kept buying it. But this one, unfortunately, the 10 and the Journey have long since gone, and I never bought them again. This one is the 12-year, And for me, actually, it's a little bit less peated than the other two. And it's a lot more sherried. In fact, I don't think the other two were sherried at all. I do want to give a little bit of credit to this whiskey and say, I actually think the nose of this whiskey is actually really nice. I really do enjoy the nose of the whiskey, but it's the taste that lets this whiskey down. And it's certainly not something that I would recommend to you guys. Again, it's another bottle of whiskey that I've just not managed to get fully through. And I've had it quite a long time, but a really substandard and quite lacking taste. So is this whiskey a whiskey that I would recommend to people? Honestly, no, but I have to acknowledge that Jura was the first distillery that got me hooked into whiskey. Now, the one that I really loved was the Lafroy 10. That was the one that changed everything for me. And then I just went on this trying phase where I had to try different whiskies. But actually it was Jura that was the one that got me hooked onto whiskey. But after having tasted a lot more whiskies in my life, I can truly sit down and say, actually, you know what? It's not really worth it. So I wouldn't recommend it, even though the emotional connection is there. Okay guys, 3 whiskies left. I'm going to actually get this really controversial one out the way right now. I know a lot of people are not going to like this inclusion. It's a fairly new distillery in Scotland. I'm sure their other whiskies are much better, but I think this is their entry level whiskey, and I just didn't get on with it at all. So I've got to talk about it. Again, honesty is everything. So I've got to include it. And that's the Ardnamurchan, American, guys. Bottled at 46.8% ABV. I wish they had names to their whiskies. I really don't get on with this whiskey at all. And as you can see, I've really tried giving it many chances. I see so many people online love this whiskey. I don't get what all the fuss is about, if I'm being totally honest with you. And I really don't get on with the whiskey, so it has to be included here. Now, next year, I really do want to buy 1 or 2 other Ardnamurchans, and I want this to be no means me trashing the distillery. It's simply one bottle and their entry level bottle as well. But I don't like it, and I don't drink it, and I definitely wouldn't buy it again. So it's on the list. Okay guys, next up, we've got a 10-year-old Speyside whiskey that is always on offer around this time of year for around £25, sometimes £20. Really cheap for a 10-year, bottled at 40% ABV. This is the Speyburn 10, one of the oldest whiskies that I actually own. And again, this is another distillery, I should say, where a lot of people like their older stuff. And so next year, I want to make it a thing where I pick up the 15-year, because I don't like criticising a distillery for one whiskey. That's just not fair on me to do at all. And hopefully in this video I've criticised whiskies, but I've not criticised distilleries, unless I have 2 bottles from that distillery that I really don't like. When it's just 1 bottle, I won't criticise the distillery. I think that's really unfair. And so I'm not criticising Speyburn, but I really genuinely don't like this whiskey at all. In fact, I'd say probably the biggest criticism I could give for this whiskey is I'd be tempted to have the monkey shoulder every day of the week over this whiskey. And if you know that I don't really like the monkey shoulder or rate it, especially for the money. This is a better price than the monkey shoulder, but having said that, I just don't like it. It doesn't give me much of anything, certainly nothing enjoyable. We're going to finish off with a Cardew whiskey, bottled at 40% ABV. This is the Gold Reserve, and I just don't get on with this whiskey either. To be honest with you, this whiskey is not a whiskey that I dislike, it's just not a whiskey that I like nor drink. So I wanted to finish with this whiskey because there's not too much that I want to say about this whiskey. It's pretty forgettable, but it's not offensive. Like, these two are actually bordering offensive, if I'm being totally honest with you. As are a few other ones as well. Certainly the Hinch Peated, maybe even the Teeling, and maybe the English whiskey as well. Giving me some really bad notes in there. The Speyburn and the Cardew don't give me any bad notes, I just don't like them. Okay guys, here concludes the 11 whiskies that I really don't like. Hopefully I've included the other 3 whiskies from a previous video and I'll clip it in here now. But just in case I can't do that, I'll quickly touch on the whiskies. We have the Old St Andrews, which is the Clubhouse, which is a blended Scotch whiskey, bottled at 40%. Shaped like a golf ball. I've reviewed it in the past. It's a screw top though whiskey. Not a particularly nice one. Not a particularly cheap one either. 25 to 30 pounds. Usually 30 pounds now. I don't recommend you pick that one up. Although the bottle is pretty cool, I have to be honest. The Old Forester, and I forget, I don't want to say the year in case I get it wrong and people go, what? That's a great whiskey. It's the entry level Old Forester. It's bottled at 40% ABV, or 43%. It's the 86 proof Old Forester. My worst bourbon. I really dislike that whiskey. So yeah, that is a whiskey that I really dislike. I'll have spoken about that, hopefully clip that one in. And the final one is of course the Monkey Shoulder. I'll have included that too. So 14 whiskies here today that I've spoken about, that I just want to put in a video to advise you guys to, not that I'm saying definitely do not buy these whiskies, factually they're terrible, that's not what I want to get across in this video, sorry. What I want to get across in this video is just simply me saying, thinking of buying any of these whiskies, have a second thought, put some more time and research into these bottles before you buy it. Or at least mentally be ready for potentially not enjoying the whiskey. Okay guys, hopefully it's appreciated me knocking on 14 bottles of whiskey. I hope you appreciate the honesty. Of course this does have repercussions, but it's something that I think is really important actually to do. So if you appreciate it, please do click a like on the video and please do click that subscribe button if you haven't already. That would really be appreciated and mean a lot. And finally guys, I hope you're all getting ready for Christmas. Maybe that Christmas spirit is starting already. I know the shops have all the decorations up already. Early start for Christmas as always. But I hope you're feeling that Christmas spirit, if not now, but soon. And I hope to see you all for the next Whiskey War.